Hey, it's Emily and this is the D&D book tag. So I was tagged by the lovely Becca over at the Becca Fowl. I'll leave her channel down below. But this tag was created by Ash and Jem. I'll leave both their channels down below and their original videos. So definitely go check them out. It has all the questions there as well. So yeah, once again, thanks Becca for tagging me. And let's jump on into this tag. So I don't actually play D&D, never have. It's something that's been on my peripheral interests, that's definitely not the right words, but it's definitely something I've been more interested in as time goes by recently. But yeah, like I said, never played it. And I haven't planned this video out at all. I've literally only just written down the questions and I think we'll just spur of the moment pick up books. One thing though that might be quite difficult is the majority of the books I have here with me I have not read. So I'm going to try and use my brain and think of like books that I've read that I don't have here. Maybe I have to rely on GOODREADS, but or maybe I should have just planned this better. Who knows? But with that, I think let's jump on in to question number 1. So the first prompt is Everyone's Dead, a character with a tragic backstory. And for that, I have picked 5 Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. This is the first one that I did think of with this, but I couldn't really think of anything that I have on my shelves currently. The reason I've picked 5 Little Pigs is that Carla in this book, she was 5 years old when, I think, God, Teams is going mad. It's my lunch break. Carla was 5 years old when her father was murdered and her mother was then hung for the crime, and then she got shipped away to like Canada, I think it was, to go to like boarding school and just didn't have any family or friends. So I think that's kind of a tragic backstory. If both your parents are dead by the time you're 6, I think that does count as a tragic backstory. I'm going to try not to repeat authors or books or series throughout this tag because I don't like doing that, but I am limited. Like I said, I don't know what most of these books contain. So yeah. Let's move on to prompt number 2. So prompt number 2 is roll persuasion with advantage and auto by author. I have a few for these. I don't really know which to pick. But I think I'm gonna go, let's just grab this one. Grady Hendrix, he's my favourite horror author. And I've got most of his books that he's released, especially the more recent ones. I do really enjoy them. They're just my kind of horror, you know? My kind of camp horror. I've just picked this one up because it was the easiest to pull out of the shelves. Grady Hendrix is really the author that got me more into horror, and since then I have explored it more, read from various other authors. I always come back to Grady Hendrix, and I've even read his Paperbacks from Hell, which is a non-fiction about the horror genre throughout, you know, time from 70s, 80s, 90s and the, you know, evolution of horror within literature. So I find it really interesting. Grady Hendrix is definitely an author by author for me. Ready for the next book. I know some of his newer ones haven't necessarily been like hits for people. I still enjoyed them. They're just fun times for me and I'll continue to buy them. So moving on to the next prompt, it's Me and the Boys Are Gonna Mess You Up, and that's an ensemble cast that you love. I think this definitely counts. I've gone with Daisy Jones and the Six. I love the whole band. All of them. This is one of my favourite books ever. It has a special place in my heart and it was my first ever Taylor Jenkins read. I bought it and read it before knowing anything about Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I have since fallen in love with all the characters. I reread this about this time last year and it was still a 5-star read for me, and the TV show came out and I love it and I love the soundtrack. My Spotify Wrapped, my #1 artist was Daisy Jones and the Six, so it just has a special place in my heart, and I know not everyone loves it. I love it and I'm allowed to, but these like 7 characters, well, more than 7 characters, I guess, if you include people like the manager and things like that, the producer. It's not just the band, you know, and I just had such a fun time with this book, and I want to go back and reread it, but not just yet. But yeah, I guess this is an ensemble cast I love all the characters so much, especially Eddie. I don't know what it is, but I like Eddie the most. Eddie and Daisy. Sorry if the angle just changed, I had to sort something out for work. But yeah, okay. Moving on to the next one. I rolled a 1, a character that you feel tries their best but keeps failing. I don't even know if I have anything here. Let me have a look because I think I have a book in mind. We'll see. Okay, so I struggled. I've just gone looking through my bookcase and I can't really think of anything that I have here to show you. This is the issue with like finishing a book and sending it straight back to my parents. This is not ideal, but the one I've gone with is You Forever by Jo Watson. I literally finished this last night. This, I guess she keeps trying and failing. Basically it follows Becca. She published a book about 2 years ago and it was like a bestseller, and now she's got the pressure to produce a second book. Her deadline's in 3 weeks, she hasn't got one, and she kind of goes on this journey. I won't say any more than that because I've talked about it in my TBR and I'm doing a vlog at the minute, so you can hear more about it when that comes out. But she keeps trying to write this book and failing, and then she goes I don't know how to say it without giving many of the like plot spoilers away, but there's lots of things that happen throughout the book that she tries to do to research for this new book that she's going to write, and it keeps getting her into trouble and keeps getting knocked back. I guess this is the best one I could come up with the limited resource I have. I'm sure there's loads of books on my TBR that have characters like this, but I don't know that they're in there, so we'll go with that one. Next up we have Roll to Tame the Floof. A book that features a dangerous creature you'd love as a pet, and I have one in mind. I don't know if this would work. Okay, so I have Burn by Patrick Ness. That's a little dusty. This is one of my favourite books ever. It's amazing. It's one of the most underhyped books by Patrick Ness. Like, I feel like you always hear about, you know, the Chaos Walking trilogy and Monstercalls, More Than This, but this is my favourite book by Patrick Ness, hands down. It is incredible, but it has dragons, and the dragon, I can't remember what it's called, Casimir. I knew it began with a K. He is one of my favourite dragons ever. I don't read a lot of fantasy, and this tiny little like light element of fantasy in here was just perfect for me. And the dragon in this, I guess that's a dangerous animal that I'd love as a pet, but I don't know if I'd love as a pet. I would just love him to be in my life like as a companion more than anything. He is a funny creature, and I definitely want to reread this book soon because I read it and loved it, and I have the paperback signed. It's one of my favourite books, and I want to see if it still is one of my favourite books. I read it during lockdown, like the first lockdown, and absolutely loved it, and I definitely want to reread it to see if I still feel the same way, but I'm sure I will, because I just remember it being so heartbreaking and I cried at it, and I don't normally cry at books. So I'm not sure I'd even be able to describe to you the plot of this book, but it's in 1950s, I want to say, 1957, America. There's dragons and dragons can get hired to work on like farms and things like that. So Sarah and her dad go meet this dragon at a petrol station or gas station, and it kind of goes from there. There's a whole prophecy that Sarah is part of, and dragon, it's so good, and I just wish more people read it. I even have a t-shirt actually that says this quote on it. It says, "How does the world end? It ends in fire." It's so good, and there's so many like, oh, I'll stop raving about this book, but I highly recommend it if you like dragons, even if you don't like fantasy that much. Like, I'm not a fantasy reader. This light magical realism, but it's not magic, it's like dragons. It's like literally real life but with dragons. I don't know how else to describe it, but I highly recommend. And that's my dangerous creature that I would love to have as a pet or as a companion. So moving on to the next prompt, and that is DM Rolls Unexpectedly, a book that surprised you. For that, I've got a duology here. I picked up the first one years ago, like years and years and years ago, in Waterstones, because it had one of those staff recommends. I had no idea what it was about apart from it was like knights. I picked it up and I fell in love. I loved it so much, and I bought the sequel, and it's one of my favourite duologies ever, and they're meant to be middle grade, but anyone I think can read them. And that is A Letter to the King by Tonka Direct. It's translated from Dutch, I believe it was Dutch anyway. I absolutely adored The Letter to the King, and then The Secrets of the Wild Wood, the sequel, incredible. I really want to reread them because they were just so good. So it kind of follows this guy, and he's about to become a knight, Churi, and he then gets tasked to take a letter to a king. Hence the letter for the king. It's a secret letter, and so he goes on this mission. Yeah, it's just his journey to deliver this letter, and I don't even know how else to describe it. It was just so good. But yeah, like it says, it means abandoning his home, breaking all the rules and leaving everything behind, even the knighthood that he has dreamt of for so long. He must trust no one. He must keep his true identity secret. Above all, he must never reveal what is in this letter. It was so good. I highly recommend. Once again, it's very like light fantasy and kind of more Knights of the Realm, I guess, but there's a tiny bit of like magic in there. But yeah, highly recommend this duology, and I believe it's been adapted into a TV show or movie, but I haven't seen it yet, but will do eventually. So the next prompt is, I would like to rage a character with anger issues. Let's have a think. Okay, I think I have one. I think I have one. 1 second. Okay, so the first one that came to mind when I saw it on my shelf, The Kissing Booth. I only have the third one here because it's the only one I haven't read. The Kissing Booth. Noah from The Kissing Booth has anger issues and gets into fights, and that's that whole, you know, good girl saves the bad guy kind of plot in the first one. So I guess Noah counts as a guy with anger issues. I don't know what else I would pick, but that just made me laugh. But let's go with it. Noah from The Kissing Booth has anger issues, so there we go. Okay, so I've just read the next prompt, and it is Hip Thrust for Seduction, and that is a spicy book, and I've kind of picked up 5. I mean, it's the same series. It's a destination love series. I'm very limited, like I said. Romances I often don't keep around. They often go straight back to my parents when I read them because they're not like favourites. However, the Destination Love series by Jo Watson is my favourite romance series ever. Almost a Bride is my favourite romance book ever. But out of these, I think Almost a Bride, although I think After the Rain has the most sexy times in it. I hate the way I used to tab, I hate it, but there's a lot of steamy moments in this book. It's kind of like, I was going to say enemies to lovers, their personalities clash and then they're confined to a small space for a long period of time together. I highly recommend this series, but I think this is the spiciest of them all, I think. But they all have their moments, obviously, but I think that's the one that stood out the most as being, that has the most of that in, so. But I do highly recommend the series. Almost a Bride, if you like fake dating, highly recommend Almost a Bride. So I know I said I didn't want to repeat authors, but Jo Watson, we'll let it slide just this once. And so finally, the last bookish prompt, there's the book, is How Do You Want to Do This? A Book with a Satisfying Ending. And for that, I have picked Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walter. I just wanted to plug this book because I don't know a single person on this planet that has also read this book, but I love it. It was my favourite book of 2022, I want to say. I adored it so much. I was not expecting it to love it half as much as I did, and the ending just made me so happy. I think I cried, which, like I said, it's quite rare for me to cry at a book. Like, it happens on like 1 or 2 books a year. But this, I absolutely adored this book. It kind of flicks between 1960s Italy and modern day Hollywood, and it's just this kind of like heartbreaking love story, and then them being separated and trying to find and reconnect in modern day, and it was so good, and the ending broke me but also made me so happy, and I won't say any more than that. I love this book, man. If you like a literary fiction, it's so good. Like, I think I once said that this is for people who like a little life but want something happier. But I don't think I'd say that again, because it's nothing like a little life. It's just so heartbreaking. I just love it. Highly recommend Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walter. If you can see here, I have is it Financial Lives of the Poets? I haven't read that one yet, but I do want to read more from Jess Walter, because if it's anything like Beautiful Ruins, then I'm gonna absolutely adore it. So yeah, that's my pick for a satisfying ending, and highly recommend Beautiful Ruins. And so on to the final question, 10. It is gather at your party, tag 3 friends. I don't know who to tag. I guess maybe Victoria from What Victoria Read. Apologies if you have all been tagged before. Chloe, although Becca might have tagged Chloe. I can't remember. And then I'll just say for the final one, anyone who wants to do this, go ahead and join the party. I guess that wraps up the D&D tag. Thank you again, Becca, for tagging me, and like I said, I'll leave Ash and Jem down below, so you should definitely go check out their channels and the original videos. So thank you very much for getting to this point in the video. I really do appreciate it. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new around here, because I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing you soon with a brand new video. Bye.